Hey guys, want to do something a little bit different today. I want to talk about the 5 mistakes to avoid in photography. Now, I know everybody that has a photography channel on YouTube does something similar to this, but I guarantee you my list is going to be different. Okay, mistake number 1. When we're talking about sensitivity to light with your digital sensor, it is called ISO. It's not a word. It's never been a word. Nobody in the industry of any stature whatsoever calls it a word. Now, I know immediately some people's red flags go up and say, hey, I know so-and-so, they're a professional. I know so-and-so that says it as a word. Listen, I've been in the industry for over 30 years professionally, and nobody has ever said it as a word. It is ISO. Years ago in America, it was ASA, it was American Standardization Association or some such thing. Went international where they took away the ASA part. It's always been ISO. If you listen to anybody in the industry, Canon, Nikon, B&H Photo, Pro Photo, Lighting, any of the big companies, they all are going to say ISO.
Is the delicate balance of shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Third, ISO. ISO is the chosen light sensitivity of the film or sensor.
In this tutorial, we'll be defining aperture, ISO, and shutter speed, which are the backbone of any photographer's knowledge.
Or even at a low ISO, it's bright out here.
Now, I know there are some people out there on the internet who have come up with, some website, some Greek word, some indication or some explanation of how you're supposed to say it as a word. I don't care. Like I said, the industry has never said it as a word. We've always said it as letters. Is it possible to fully understand what ISO is, even if you say it as a word? Of course. Of course. You could completely understand it, know how to use it, know how to make the most of it in your photography. You may understand it, you just sound stupid. Let me say it like this. There is a basketball team in Boston known as the Boston Celtics. Now, the Boston Celtics have been around forever. They're one of the greatest basketball teams of all time. They've won numerous world championships, and some of the best players in the game have come from Boston. And if you can believe the internet, the Boston Celtics started in 1946. It looks like they've won 20 championships or more. One of the greatest. Ugliest uniforms, greatest basketball team. Now, even with all the rich history of the Boston Celtics, I'm sure that I could get online and find out that the correct pronunciation for the word Celtic is actually Celtic. But I dare you to go into a sports bar in New England and say, hey, give me some beer and nachos. I'm here for the Celtic game. My point for mistake number 1 is this. If you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, don't say things wrong. Don't buck the trend of what the industry has said for literally decades and decades. It's ISO. Mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 has to do with depth of field. Now, I'm not going to get into what depth of field is. I think we all know what depth of field is. But I see this trend on the internet these days that only shallow depth of field photographs have a professional look to them, which is completely false. Now, shallow depth of field is great, but there are certainly professional photographs and applications that require a great deal of depth of field. Architectural photography, landscape photography comes to mind. Those are images that you probably want the foreground and the background to be as sharp as possible. So anybody that says that depth of field needs to be shallow in order to obtain a professional look, don't buy that. And while I'm on the subject of depth of field, there's another trendy word that's going around the internet right now, and that's bokeh. Now, bokeh is a legitimate word, and it's great. I get it. But don't get trapped into always thinking that if I have this trendy word to use in a sentence that I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Bokeh's great, but you don't always need to have bokeh or, these creamy, soft depth, shallow depth of field backgrounds. Whatever. I mean, if you're filming a Hallmark movie, it's perfect. Okay, mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 that I see people making is the lens shade. Now, everybody loves a lens shade. Lens shades are great for reducing lens flare, and controlling the amount of light that's hitting the front of your lens. The issue or the mistake that I see is everybody using it backwards. Now, you can put them on backwards usually because, you know, for storage purposes, we're able to put it on backwards so it fits in our camera bag. But to walk around with it backwards like this looks stupid. And everybody knows that in photography, image is everything. Okay, mistake number 4 is having a wrong perception of yourself as a photographer. And this can work 2 ways. Either you have too low of a perception of yourself as a photographer, or you have too high of a perception of yourself as a photographer. Lots of photographers are out there thinking they know everything there is to know about photography, they can do anything, and they really don't know anything. Don't be the kind of photographer that thinks that they don't have anything to learn. We all have things to learn. The industry is changing rapidly. With the latest software or the latest, greatest camera features, it's always changing, and styles change faster today than they've ever changed. So don't ever get to the point where you think you know everything and there's nothing more to learn. Or maybe you have too low of a perception of yourself as a photographer. I've known a lot of students over the years that, you know, had this attitude of, you know, I really don't know that much, I'm not that good, and they're really actually pretty good photographers. Be willing to step out and take a chance. Be willing to take a chance and put yourself out there. You're probably better than you think you are. So be willing to show yourself as a photographer, let people see your work, but don't ever get to a place where you're too arrogant that you can't be learning. And mistake number 5 is stay away from camera debates. I am totally fine with people being into gear, loving the latest, greatest gear, but ultimately it's the photographer that takes the photograph and not the camera itself. Stay away from debating how many megapixels your camera has or how big the sensor is. Those things are all great and they have a place, but ultimately it's up to you as a photographer. And because I just made this mistake myself, I'm going to throw in one free mistake not to make. Hopefully you've never made this. I made this the other day. And that is to not delete images from your memory card in the camera. Now what I'm talking about is if you're taking pictures at a photo shoot and you're looking through the images on the back of your camera and you're deleting as you go. I've never done that. I'd never made a practice of doing that, but for some reason the other day I decided to do that. I don't even know why. Luckily it wasn't anything important, but the mistake that I made was that every time I ever delete something from my camera, I delete everything. Because I don't delete during a shoot, once I've downloaded it into the computer, I've done everything in the memory, it's safe to erase the memory card, then I'll delete everything. So in the process of thinking I'll just delete 1 or 2, I accidentally deleted them all, just out of habit. I didn't even realize I had done it until I went to download things onto my computer and realized there was nothing left there. I had deleted them all. So I just got out of the routine. It was something that I never do that, and yeah, I lost them all. Now luckily it was just snapshots in the backyard, so I didn't lose anything important, but I certainly could have. So that's just my word of advice. I'm sure you have your workflow and how you do things. Stick with it. Stay with your routine. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Give me a comment. Tell me other mistakes that people need to avoid. Maybe we can help some people before they make them. And yeah, have a great day.
Is the delicate balance of shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Third, ISO. ISO is the chosen light sensitivity of the film or sensor.
In this tutorial, we'll be defining aperture, ISO, and shutter speed, which are the backbone of any photographer's knowledge.
Or even at a low ISO, it's bright out here.